Hey, this is Langerman from Violinna.live, helping you along your musical journey. In this video, we are going to do scales with embellishments. Now, what do I mean by that? Sometimes in Baroque music, classical music, we see some embellishments such as trills and turns and upper and lower neighbor tones. They're pretty common in Mozart, where you see chromatic notes outlining a scale. So very often we practice our scales normally, major scale, minor scale, whatnot. But whenever it comes to embellishments, if you suddenly see a turn, sometimes it makes us think a little bit extra. So about a year ago, I actually encountered a classical piece of music. I was playing some chamber music where there were arpeggios and each one of them had a turn. And it kind of stumped me because it wasn't a difficult piece, but when I came to the section, it was a little frustrating. It took a little extra time to practice, and I realized, you know, no amount of scale work, no amount of Carl Flesch or Galamian scales would have prepared me for something like this. So I decided to come up with a few other ways to practice scales. And by the way, if you want to follow along with this, I actually made a blog post about this. I'm going to link those down in the description below, where you can actually download the PDF. I'm not sure if it's downloadable, actually, I don't remember, but you'll be able to see them there, and so that you can follow along, or you can follow along on the screen here with me. And also, these scales are going to be a great warm-up for anybody who wants to start improvisation, either in a classical style or anything else, really. This is a great starting point. So we're going to start with a simple one-octave D major scale. We're going to work with that today, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to embellish it with the upper neighbor diatonically coming down. Now there are also two different ways you can do this. You can do diatonic neighbors, or you could do chromatic neighbors. Diatonic means all the notes are going to be within the D major scale. We're going to have, on the way up, the upper neighbor is going to slur down to the main note of the scale. So for example, E will slur down into D, F sharp will slur down into E, etc. And then we'll do the reverse. On the way back down, we will have the lower neighbor slur up to the main note. So it's going to sound like this. And then going down, you'll do opposite. So C sharp going into D, B into C sharp, leading tone into D. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to do chromatic neighbor tones. So everything is going to be a half step away from the main note of the scale. So for D, the upper neighbor chromatically is E flat. So we're going to do, next note in the scale is E. Chromatic neighbor on top is F natural. This is where it gets tricky, because that's when it really makes you think. And when this kind of stuff comes up in repertoire, in more advanced repertoire, like actually even like Richard Strauss, he uses a lot of these chromatic notes, even from above, from below, different turns. This is where sometimes it gets confusing when we sight read. So to E we have F natural, A flat, E flat. Doesn't sound as much of a D major scale at all, does it? Coming down, we will have C sharp going to D like before, B sharp to C sharp, now we're going to reverse everything. So on the way up, we're going to have the lower neighbor come up to the main note, and on the way down, we will have the upper neighbor come down. So it's going to sound almost like a chromatic scale. And some notes are going to be actually repeated because there are some half steps in the major scale, of course. Okay, so now we'll make it a little bit more confusing, if it's not confusing enough already. So wherever there are repeated notes, we just had some repeated notes, wherever we have that, we're going to switch it. So going up, we will do lower neighbor coming up chromatically, but whenever we have that moment where we have to repeat the note, like when we had to repeat the F sharp, that's when we're going to do the opposite. We'll have the upper neighbor come down to the main note, also chromatically. So you're going to get something like this. So instead of repeating F sharp, we're going to come to G with the A flat. Then continuing the pattern, so going up, G sharp to A. Here also upper neighbor, E flat to G. Okay, let's go back to some diatonic stuff so we recognize the tonality a little bit more again. We're going to do, instead of neighbor tones, now we're going to do turns. We are going to start from the note above, come down to the main note, go to the note below, come back to the main note. We're going to place these turns in between notes. So we'll play the main note, so we'll start with D, make the turn. The turn is 4 notes, so upper, main, lower, main. So we have next note, turn, and then continue. So you can do the whole scale like this. Now, we've been doing 1 octave D major scale. This one will require you to go into positions, of course, like for that first one. Reverse the same thing. So now we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to reverse the turn. So we'll do lower neighbor first and then upper neighbor. So same idea, diatonics, keeping it diatonic. Third position. Shift down. Okay, next level, same thing, keeping it diatonic. This time we're going to go straight into each turn, so we're not going to play the main note at the beginning of each one. So we're going to start right away, we'll do regular turns. So for each one, again, like we practiced the very first exercise, we're going to start with the upper neighbor. So we have right away, shift, shift, and so on. Okay, so now, okay, next level, to make it sound a little bit more interesting, let's make only the lower neighbors chromatic, so that the upper note will stay diatonic. So do the first exercise with starting with the main note, so you can really hear the tonality. So the first one stays the same because the lower neighbors is a half step here for the leading tone. There. And so on. Okay, next variation, same thing, only lower neighbor is chromatic, but this time starting directly on each turn, starting from the upper neighbor. Coming down, shift, shift, shift. Or you can shift just for the last one, whichever way you like. Okay, now this is the most difficult one. We're going to do both upper and lower neighbor tones to be chromatic. This is where it's challenging. So we're going to do the one where we are starting on the main note, so we can really zero in on those. Starting on D, E flat, and C sharp. E natural, because that's the main note. And you get it. Next, finally, last one, starting on the upper note. You can do these all in reverse too, by the way. So starting with the E flat. course, you can try all of these also in reverse turns, and you can do other embellishments too that you like. So can you believe we were just playing D major scale this whole time? Okay, so I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know your biggest takeaway in the comment section below. If you would like a summary of all of my content in both video and written form, and talk about practice strategies and techniques and personal growth on a deeper level, sign up for my bi-monthly newsletter in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell. I will see you next time. Happy practicing!